If you're waiting for feeling more confident before you act or for the perfect moment before you move, you might actually wait forever, because aligned action rarely feels aligned at first. It can feel uncomfortable, exposing, cringy, unsafe, or even terrifying. And most people mistake that feeling for a sign that they shouldn't move, that they shouldn't act. But what if that discomfort isn't a red flag? What if it's a part of the process? In the last video, we talked about how awareness doesn't create change on its own, but no change can be created without awareness either. Awareness shows you the pattern, while aligned action interrupts it, and interruption at first very rarely feels comfortable. A lot of people say things like, I'll start when it feels aligned, I'll move when I feel more confident, or I'll just wait for clarity before I move. On the surface, that sounds reasonable, but here's the honest truth. Most of the time, we are actually not waiting for alignment. We are clinging on to certainty and comfort, which is something our nervous system craves. But here is the thing, growth and comfort can rarely coexist in the same moment. We've been sold that idea that taking aligned action feels peaceful and expansive. And sometimes it absolutely can feel like that, but most of the time, stepping into a new version of yourself rarely feels peaceful at all. Actually, it can feel terrifying or even destabilizing, because growth requires you to act before your identity feels solid. And the reason for that becomes clearer when we understand what's happening underneath. Your nervous system, which operates largely through your subconscious mind, is wired for survival, not expansion. Its primary job is not to help you thrive, it's to detect threats and keep you safe. And safe to your nervous system means familiar. Not happiness, not fulfillment, not abundance, or not thriving. Familiar. Even if that familiar means something destructive or not optimal. So when you consider taking aligned action towards your goals and dreams, like raising standards or your prices, having that conversation, expressing how you feel, or maybe even posting a video online or setting a boundary with someone, your nervous system doesn't automatically register that as growth, as something that is aligned with your highest self. It registers as something that is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel unsafe to the nervous system. That's why you might notice your body react with tightness, resistance, anxiety, hesitation, or even that feeling of sudden losing clarity. Now, here is where the ego comes in. The ego is the identity you have built over time, the self-image formed through your memories, beliefs, and past experiences. The ego is the I you believe yourself to be. Its role is mainly to maintain continuity and to protect the version of you that feels known and consistent. It's kind of like a mediator between your inner world and your outer world, constantly scanning for threats. So when your nervous system reacts to something unfamiliar or threatening, when you feel unsafe, the ego steps in and interprets that as discomfort. And then it can use protective mechanisms to keep you stable and safe. So the ego can often label situations as this isn't aligned, this isn't safe, or this isn't the right time. And I am not here to demonize our ego. Thank God we actually have an ego that can alert us for potential danger. But what can end up happening is that our ego can misinterpret situations as threatening, solely on the basis of being unfamiliar and challenges our identity we are used to live from, not because the situation actually is misaligned. So what feels like misalignment might actually just be the discomfort of stepping outside of your conditioned self. And that is a very different thing. So aligned action isn't just about behavioral changes then, it's identity change. And identity change more often than not feels like loss before it feels like expansion. Because in order to become the woman who sets boundaries, speaks confidently, takes up space, builds the business, or choose differently in relationships, you have to stop being the woman who stays small, seeks approval, avoid risks, and waiting to feel ready. And the ego doesn't like that, because the ego is attached to who you have been, not who you aspire to be. So it can very convincingly say things like, you're not ready yet, you need to learn more first, or this doesn't feel aligned, or maybe this isn't the right timing. But the harsh realization is that what sometimes feels like misalignment is actually just the discomfort of shedding the old identity. But there is actually even deeper layers to this, because there is usually a benefit to staying where we are as well. Staying small protects you from criticism, or staying silent protects you from rejection, or staying in the process protects you from responsibility, and waiting to feel aligned protects you from failing publicly. But in actuality, what you try to protect yourself from is the very thing that actually moves you forward. The discomfort you are avoiding is often the doorway to the version of you that you say you want to become. And another layer to this is the tension between our short-term and long-term self. Your short-term self wants immediate relief, it wants comfort, certainty, and pleasure. Your long-term self wants expansion, but expansion often requires discipline, patience, and faith. Short-term comfort is immediate and predictable, and long-term growth requires effort before the reward. And because we are wired to conserve energy and often take the easy way out, we often can end up choosing the short-term self. And then we can end up labeling the long-term gratification as friction or something that is misaligned. But friction doesn't automatically mean that it is wrong. Sometimes it simply means that we need to put in a little effort before we see the results. Another important distinction to learn is the difference between fear and intuition. Fear is often very reactive, and it can feel like very contracting. It can feel like very urgent and rushed, that we kind of need to make a decision right away. Whilst intuition, even when it tells you no, feels very grounded and calm. It doesn't panic you, or it doesn't spiral. It doesn't demand immediate escape or a solution. When you haven't practiced to distinguish the two and how they feel in your body, fear can actually very easily disguise itself as intuition. In other words, your fear can very convincingly say that things are not in alignment with you, even though it actually might be. And this is where we come back to something deeper. Aligned action is not about feeling ready. It's about acting in alignment with who you want to be, or who you choose to assume yourself to be before it feels natural. Neville Goddard often talks about living in the end, but living in the end isn't just about wishful thinking or visualizing the outcome. It's embodying the identity of the woman who already has it. And here is the important part. The woman who already has it doesn't wait to feel ready. She inhabits the version of herself now. Let's say you want to manifest a loving relationship. How does that version of you who already is in that loving relationship act? How does she think? How does she speak? How does she react? How does she give and receive love? And so on and so forth. The question you need to ask yourself is, what would I do if this were already mine? And that's what aligned action actually is. It's choosing and acting from the identity you are stepping into, not reacting from the identity you are outgrowing. And that choice really feels comfortable at first. Rehearsing a new identity can feel threatening to the ego because it is unfamiliar. So remember, rehearsal almost always feels awkward before it feels natural. Let me ask you a question. But before I do, I just want to remind you to be kind to yourself when you're answering these questions. Please don't judge yourself or shame yourself, but rather be open-minded and curious. So here's the question I would love for you to sit with in this video. What action feels aligned right now, but slightly unsafe? What are you calling not aligned that might actually just be unfamiliar? And lastly, are you waiting for alignment or are you waiting for comfort? But remember, aligned action doesn't require you to overhaul your whole life immediately. The only thing it requires is one conscious choice in a different direction than you are used to. And then simply just repeating that choice until your nervous system learns that it is safe. If it's one thing that I want you to remember from this video, it's this. Aligned action rarely feels aligned at first. It can feel uncertain, it can feel vulnerable, and it can feel uncomfortable. But discomfort doesn't necessarily mean misalignment. Sometimes it means expansion. So if you're waiting to feel ready before you act, just remember this. The feeling that you are craving or wanting often comes after you move, not before. If this resonated with you, I would love to hear what action feels aligned for you right now, but maybe feels a little uncomfortable or scary. And thank you so much for watching and for being here. That means so much to me. And I will see you in the next one. Bye, babe.